Hey there, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 38. And this week, we're going to be taking a look at some of the things that you can reflect on over the Christmas period, because it's getting close now, to help you propel yourself into 2025 and make it your best one yet. Because the thing is, the festive period is not just about stuffing your face full of mince pies, turkey, and drinking gallons of mulled wine. By the way, who drinks mulled wine? It is the most hideous thing on the planet. But the festive period is also a great opportunity to do some reflection, to consider what you're going to do in 2025. What is the next chapter of your life going to look like? What new potential adventures are you going to go on? So in this episode, I want to go through 5 things that you want to consider over the festive period that will help you catapult into 2025 and make it your best year yet. So grab a cuppa or whatever you do when you're listening to your podcasts, and let's get started. Hey there and welcome to the Stress Less Living podcast. My name is Stephen Burns and I've been a practicing coach, trainer and hypnotherapist for 25 years. Each week I'll share easily digestible bite-sized ideas that you can immediately put into practice so that you can live a more harmonious and balanced life. Because life is challenging, but whatever we encounter, we always have a choice. We can take the easy route or the hard route, the low stress way or the high stress way. Well, the Stress Less Living podcast is about always looking for the easy routes in life, the low stress ways to accomplish your goals, get more of what you want, and ultimately live a happy and more effortless life. So if you're looking for the perfect antidote for the chaos of modern life, my friend, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's get started. And like I said, I want to go through 5 things that you want to consider or mull over during the festive period that will help you catapult into 2025 and make it your best year yet. Because I don't know about you, but I love the Christmas period. I love the fact that there's a bit of enforced downtime. For me, I find it difficult to stop working sometimes. So when everybody else stops, that kind of gives me permission or me license to take a bit of time off, to relax and, do some other things and also some reflection. And that's the other thing I really like about this time of year. It acts as a kind of incubation period. The pressure's off. You don't really have to think too much about work. So you can just let your imagination go wild and think about where you're going to head next in life. So like I said, I want to take you through 5 things that you can consider over this period that can really help you get 2025 off to a fast start. So number 1, re-examine your values. So a value, I've spoken about these quite a bit in previous episodes, but let's just go over the basics. So a value is an area of life that is important to you. You could also look at these as emotional states of mind that are more important to you than other ones. And as human beings, we kind of like to give these keywords. So things like love, connection, significance, security, excitement, adventure, growth, contribution. The list could go on. And we also like to have a hierarchy of values. So we arrange these elements or these important emotional states into a kind of league table. And this all happens subconsciously as well. And this league table will have a huge influence on your behaviour and what you have to do in order to be happy. So say, for example, your top 5 values or your top 5 league table would be connection, growth, fun, security, and contribution. What you need to do in order to feel a sense of fulfillment is going to be very different than if your league table was power, significance, contribution, adventure, and excitement. It's a very interesting set of values there. But the general idea is what you want to be doing is you want to be organising your life around about your most important values. You want to be doing activities and pursuing goals that fit with those values as much as you possibly can, and that will maximize your levels of fulfillment. So this is always a good exercise to do, but the reason why you want to do a check-in with your values at this time of year is because your values tend to shift over time. So when you are relaxing, when you're having a bit of downtime, you're not at the coalface, so to speak, of your working life, it's a good time just to sit back, grab a pen and paper, and just reflect on the things that really are currently important to you? Because like I said, they can shift over time throughout the year. And this shift can really happen gradually as well, without us being consciously aware of it. We're just going along nicely in life, and then all of a sudden we realise that we're not as happy as what we used to be. Something is out of sync. Something just feels like it's missing. And we don't quite know why that is, but almost every single time it's because one or more of our most important values is not being fulfilled. And it's all happened so gradually that we've not even noticed. It's a bit like that old analogy about boiling a frog. So if you were to boil a frog, I don't know why you would ever want to do that, but anyway. But if you were to just throw the frog into boiling hot water, then it would jump out straight away. It would react. But if you put the frog into cold water and then gradually increase the temperature incrementally over time, the frog wouldn't notice it and eventually it would be too late. I'm kind of feeling sorry for the frog here. No frogs were harmed during the making of this episode, I promise. But it's the same with our values. They can shift, and it can often happen so gradually that we don't even notice it until it's too late. So to avoid this, what you want to do is at the end of each year, grab a pen and a piece of paper and just take some time to re-examine your values. So the questions I like to ask are fairly simple. What's important to me in life? Or what's most important to me in life? That cuts through all of the extra stuff and really gets us to focus in on the crucial aspects of life that really are important to our well-being. Or what emotional states are the ones I feel like I need the most to be fulfilled? And then once you've explored these questions and you've got a list of keywords, you've maybe even arranged them into your league table, your hierarchy, you then want to explore the definitions of these values. And this is something that so many people forget to do, but it's really important because these keywords like love, connection, safety, security, growth, excitement, fun, adventure, etc. are subjective. Your versions are going to be different to mine. And my version is going to be different to wee Johnny or wee Jeannie's down the street. So it's important to explore what those terms actually mean. So for example, say contribution is one of the things that comes up. That's one of your higher up values. Then you want to ask yourself, okay, so what does contribution actually mean to me? What is my version of contribution? Because there's not one universal version of contribution, is there? It's subjective. So you want to explore what it means to you. For some people, maybe it means helping out in a charity shop, or for others, it might mean just making people smile or being there for them. Or maybe it's something a bit bigger. Maybe for you, it means starting a business that makes a difference to people's lives. Again, there's no right or wrong here. It's about exploring your definitions, what these terms actually mean to you. And this is really important because often our values themselves don't change, but our definitions of them do. They start to morph and shift and transform into something quite a bit different than what they previously were. So it's important that you check in at this level. So if you want more information on how to do this or just to do what we call a values elicitation, then I'd recommend you check out episode number 27 of the podcast. I talk about it in relation to happiness, but I go into it in much more depth. You want to check out that episode. But in general, it's about taking the time to figure out what's important to you. And you can do this anytime. It's a good exercise to do any time of the year, but it's especially useful at the end of the year because, like I said, you're in this incubation period, the pressure's off. So you often get a higher quality of answers because you're more relaxed and you can do that in a reflection. So that's number one. Number two is take a look at your relationships. So this is one that can potentially raise some stuff for some people. So the relationships you have in life are crucially important to your well-being. And I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that, but it's definitely worth re-emphasizing. So there's a thing I read about recently called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which is one of the longest running studies on happiness and health. So it started way back in 1938 and it's still going on just now. And what they've done is they've gathered a huge amount of data over the course of people's lives about their well-being and overall levels of contentment. And they've looked at it across various different areas, work, personal, social, the full shebang. And what they found was that happiness tends to be unique to the individual, which is something we would expect. But the one constant thing that came out was the importance of having strong, meaningful relationships. That this was the most significant determinant of happiness and health. It showed that good relationships help protect us against the harmful effects of stress, they improve emotional well-being, and they even contribute to better physical health too, including reducing chronic illnesses and extending life expectancy as well, which is pretty incredible. And one of the things that really stood out for me about this study was that it wasn't the quantity of relationships that mattered, it was the quality of them. That you don't actually need to know a lot of people, you just have to have a few quality and meaningful relationships. That's what counts. And sometimes having too many friends can actually be detrimental because you end up with lots of superficial acquaintances that barely scratch the surface in terms of meaning. So quality over quantity is the thing that matters. So I'm going to suggest that you be a bit more ruthless about who you spend your time with in 2025. And that doesn't mean that you have to start cutting people out of your life left, right and centre. I've seen many an influencer give this advice on Insta or TikTok. There will, of course, be some people you want to cut out, but I think that is pretty rare. That's when you find yourself in a relationship that is super toxic and has no sign of changing. You want to cut those relationships out as much as you possibly can. But it's more just about being selective in terms of who you spend your quality time with and limiting the amount of time that you spend with those who aren't a great fit for you or those who aren't a good influence on your well-being. So to give you an example, for me, this time last year, I joined a dance performance group. And I have to say, I love the group so much because of the camaraderie. We all get on so well. We practice hard, but we don't take ourselves too seriously. The whole thing has been just an absolute blast. And the thing is, there are other performance groups quite close to me that I could have chosen. But looking at these groups from the outside, the environment that the instructors have created within them is just not for me. They take the whole thing far too seriously. There's no chance I'd want to be part of that because I really do value relationships and I know that the link that they can have with your happiness. So I think it's important to consider who are your people. Clarify this, reflect on that over the festive period, figure out who they are and be more selective in 2025. So that's number 2. Number 3, embrace the power of the random. So it's a great thing to set goals, right? You want to do that, and ideally you want to create goals that are linked to your values so that they have some oomph behind them, they have some meaning. So while you definitely do want to do that, you also want to leave space to embrace what I call the power of the random. So this is where you deliberately do things that you wouldn't normally do. So you deliberately put yourself into situations that are outside your comfort zone and also things that are so different to what you already know and do. And the reason why this can be so powerful is because as human beings, we feel comfortable with the familiar, but we learn and grow from what's different. And if we do something that is way different to what we normally do, then it opens up your mind to a radically different way to experience life. And this can add so much extra spice to life that it can be utterly amazing. So to give you an example, 13 years ago, a friend of mine asked me to go to a dance class with them. We're talking a lot about dancing in this episode. And at the time, I was like, what, are you kidding? I can't dance. I don't even want to dance. It's just something I don't think I'll ever do. But they persuaded me, they kind of strong-armed me into it. I went and I very quickly fell in love with it. And I now spend so much of my free time doing it. I have done for 13 years. It's completely changed the way that I live my life. It's opened me up to new lifestyles, different people. Most of the people in the scene are international, so I've learned so much about the world that I wouldn't have learned about before, and it still keeps on giving to this day. And it all started by doing something random, by embracing this extreme difference. So over the festive period, have a think, what could be something majorly different that you could do in 2025? That would radically mix things up. And the thing is, you don't have to leave everything down to chance. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I'm not suggesting that you start making all of your major life decisions using the throw of a dice. You don't want to do that. You still want to set goals and go after them. But what if you were to open up 10 or 15% of your life to the power of random? What would that be like? Because if you do, I'd be willing to wager that it will be a pretty seismic shift in the way that you live your life. It will help you embark on so many different adventures, and it'll just add in that extra spice in a very positive way too. So that's number 3. Number 4 is embrace a growth mindset. Plan for your development. This is a great time of year to do this. Are you someone who struggles with work-life balance? You find it difficult to maintain harmony between career ambitions and your personal well-being. You're doing your best to balance demands and deadlines with the other important aspects of your life, but things like burnout, stress, and a nagging sense of guilt seem to forever lurk in the background. Well, one of the best first steps that you can do to create more balance is to do a full life audit. This is a powerful process that helps you highlight areas of your life that are a little bit out of sync that potentially need addressing so that you can be more in harmony. So if you want to do a life audit, then I have a free PDF that will take you through the entire thing. To get access to that, please check the show notes. You'll see a link and all the information you need. So you've maybe heard of the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. I'll include a link to it in the show notes. So in the book, she makes the distinction between having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset is where you believe that all of your qualities, your intelligence, your resilience, your ability to learn, your personality traits are all static. They're all fixed and rigid. They can't change. That you're only given a certain amount of these things at birth, and that is you just have to make do with it. Whereas a growth mindset is where you believe that all of these things are fully up for grabs, that everything is changeable, irrespective of who you are or your life situation, that everything can be grown, developed, improved to some degree, always, every single time. And in the book, she gives lots of examples, but one specific example is with kids at school. And what she said is that the kids who show great academic promise initially aren't always the ones that then go on to develop that and then high degrees of success, or academic success anyway. That the best indicator of, whether or not they are going to go on and be successful is whether that kid has a fixed or a growth mindset. So for example, say an academically talented kid had a fixed mindset, so they believed that they had been given a high level of intelligence from birth. That sounds good, right? Well, Carol Dweck says it's not really, because what can often happen is they can start off initially very well, but then when they inevitably hit a snag, that's when things start to go south. Because they believe that their intelligence is inherent, it's fixed, they naturally assume that they've reached the limits of their potential and they become majorly stuck, or they totally freak out and give up. Whereas the kids who have a growth mindset might not display a high level of intelligence or competency in the early days, but because they believe it's something that they can improve, they learn from those blocks, those sticking points, and their progress just keeps on going. For me, it's a bit like the story of the tortoise and the hare. Of course, we all know that the hare flies off in the beginning and is miles ahead because inherently he's got more speed. But then he gets a little bit arrogant and he underestimates the plodding, relentless nature of the tortoise. He ends up falling asleep, and of course, we all know the end. The tortoise just keeps going, one step in front of the other, and eventually wins the race. So I think it's important to embrace a growth mindset any time of the year because the world is changing at such a fast rate. So if you don't continue to learn and adapt, then you will be left behind. It's just a harsh reality. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always got. But the reality is that that's not even actually true. Often, if you do what you've always done, then you won't even get what you've always got because the world changes, it evolves, and the things that used to work might not continue to work. In fact, it's likely that they will eventually expire. So a growth mindset is always important, but at this time of the year, it's worth taking a deeper look at it and bringing it more to the foreground. So I'd recommend you start by just thinking back across the year that you've just experienced and asking yourself, how have I developed? Have I developed enough? Or have I been a little bit static, a little bit stagnant? And then when you look forward to 2025, you want to then start to have a think, how would you like to grow and develop in this coming year? And I love this question here. If you were to develop in one key area that would make the biggest difference to your life, what would that be? Absolutely love that question. And you don't have to make any definite plans just yet, but it's just something worth considering and mulling over during the festive periods. So that's the fourth thing. And a fifth thing that's worth considering is the importance of decluttering and simplifying your life. So the thing is, we live in a world that is getting more and more messy, more cluttered with all sorts of junk and just all sorts of stuff. And it doesn't matter what we do these days, the chances of overstimulation and just getting lost in choice is ever present. We can log onto the internet and get access to information on pretty much any subject. We can go onto YouTube and get videos on how to do practically anything. We can order something on Amazon with one click and it arrives the next day. We live in a world where there is so much choice and we get access to all of these choices at the touch of a button. I mean, even if you go to the supermarket these days just to buy toothpaste, it can become an overwhelming experience. There's about 20 different varieties. I don't even know what each of these are. And this is, of course, good. It's nice to have choice. I don't mean to sound entitled here, but this does come at a cost. We have to continually fight the urge to get more and more and more and clutter up our life with absolute garbage that most likely isn't going to really make a difference. So I'm actually in the process of getting my house ready to go up for sale. So that's one of the random things for next year. Is I've decided to move to another city, a completely different place to live. So I'm getting my house up for sale, and genuinely, I cannot believe the amount of crap that I've accumulated over the past 14 years. It is utterly incredible. So over the last few months, I've been throwing stuff out and doing my best to be as ruthless as I possibly can. And at first, it was really hard, especially with clothes. But then once I got into it, it was amazing. The result was so cathartic. And now I'm getting there definitely. And my house mostly seems very simple and uncluttered. And I have to say, it feels fantastic. I've got this incredible sense of mental clarity just by wandering about my house. And I think this is not just good for your house, it's also a great philosophy for life. When we declutter and simplify our life, it frees up mental space so that we can focus on the things that really matter. It reduces overwhelm, gives us clarity, and ultimately it leads to a much happier existence. So you may be wondering, what does this actually look like? Well, essentially, it's about reducing the number of things that you do while looking to appreciate more depth in each of them. So this, again, goes back, I guess, to the point I made about choosing relationships. It's quality over quantity. It's the same when it comes to other aspects of your life. It's about figuring out the few things in the different areas of your life that bring you the most amount of joy, satisfaction, and fulfillment, and then doubling down on them as much as you possibly can. So I've recently also started to do this in business. So as a business owner, your time is so valuable, and there is a big tendency to do something that's referred to as playing office. So this is where you just do random stuff like sending emails, organise your folders, do some admin, maybe work on your business cards to make them look all perfect and shiny, things that make you feel busy but don't actually move the needle forward much, if any, in your business. I guess there's also the risk of doing this in your working environment as well. Procrastinating, not doing the things that you need to do, and just doing peripheral stuff that don't actually move anything forward. And while these peripheral tasks do have some level of importance, they shouldn't be your primary focus as a business owner. Instead, you want to figure out what are the 1, 2, or maybe even 3 things that will make the biggest impact on getting customers and growing your business, and then doubling down on those things. Focus more time on less. I'm sure you've heard of something called the Pareto principle. So this is the 80-20 rule. So this is the idea that 80% of the results that you'll get in pretty much any walk of life will come from 20% of your efforts. So it's all about figuring out what that 20% is. I think in reality, it's more the 90-10 rule rather than 80-20, but I'm sure you get the picture. So if you want to find out more information about this idea about focusing more on less, then I'd recommend you check out a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. Again, I'll include a link to this in the show notes. He sounds Scottish, but I don't think he is. But he talks about the importance of figuring out what is absolutely essential for moving your life forward, and then focusing all of your energy on that or those things, and doing your best to eliminate or minimise the rest. Now, I don't entirely agree with that philosophy. As I mentioned earlier, I think it can be very powerful to embrace the random a little bit. It just makes your life a bit more balanced. But at the end of the day, we do only have a finite amount of time, and it's so easy to get distracted and caught up in meaningless stuff that it is still incredibly important to figure out what's going to really make a positive difference to our life. What are the few things that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, and then channel our energy towards those things. So that's another little thing worth considering throughout the festive period. How can you declutter and simplify your life more? With the chaotic nature of modern living, I think this has now become an essential practice. So there we have it, 5 things that are worth considering over the festive period to help catapult you into the new year with a sense of gusto and positivity. So let's do a quick review. Number 1, re-examine your values. This is a great time of year when you're just chilling out. It's that incubation period to re-examine the things that are most important to you. And if you remember, it's important to figure out or re-figure out what your values are to make sure they're still the same, but it's also good to do a check on the definitions. They may have shifted, they may have changed slightly. And then once you've got those, you can then go, okay, so how can I actually make some changes in my life that can help me fulfill them more in the coming year? Number 2, take a look at your relationships. And it's not about just cutting out relationships left, right and centre. You don't want to be that cold about it. But if you do have a relationship that is toxic, that clearly is not working for you and shows no signs of improvement, then you might want to cut that out. Or at the very least, you want to minimise it. But I think the key thing is to figure out who are your people. This will affect your happiness more than anything else. Number 3, embrace the power of the random. You still want to go after your goals. You do want to set targets, set aims, set directions in life. But you also want to embrace the random, the unexpected a little bit. You don't want to be so scripted that life is just utterly and wholly predictable. Add in a bit of unpredictability and it will open you up to so many cool things, and it will just change the way that you view life. So you want to have a think, what are some radically different things that you can add into your life in 2025? Even if you just start small at first. And then number 4, embrace a growth mindset. Plan for your development. So like I said, a growth mindset is useful at any time of the year, but during the festivities, when we're enjoying some downtime, it is just nice to have a think, okay, so how am I looking to develop this next year? What are the key things that if I were to improve them or move them forward would make the biggest difference to my life? Even if you can come up with one thing that you want to improve throughout the year, then that is absolutely fantastic. You actually don't want to be trying to develop like 6 or 7 different areas of your life. That is too many. Like 2 or 3 main things is probably enough. Focus on those and do your best to develop them. And finally, number 5, the importance of decluttering and simplifying your life. So how can you have a bit of a clear out? Not just a physical clear out if you decide to eject some things from your house, but also a psychological one. How can you really narrow down on the aspects of life that are most important to you? The ones that are really going to move the needle forward in your personal life, your social life, your work life, or someplace else. Because when you focus more time on less, that's when you start to see real progress. So that is us for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I would love it if you could subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcast. Or if you're feeling especially generous at this time of year, if you could leave me a review, it really does help. So thanks once again for listening, and I'll speak to you next week.